So, hi, everyone. I'm Linda Irvine, and I'm the co-designer and facilitator of the Leadership for Women's program at York University Sheila Executive Education Center. As part of our program, we invite successful women leaders to share their stories on their path to leadership success. Today, we're honored to have with us a very special guest, Sheila Baird, who is a true trailblazer as a woman leader in a very male-dominated business of investments. She joins us from New York City. Welcome, Sheila.
Thank you. My pleasure to be with you.
Thank you. So by way of introduction, I'll tell you a little bit about Sheila's background. So Sheila is a founding partner of Kimmelman Baird LLC, a member firm and registered investment advisor in New York City. She leads the investment committee, is the Chief Compliance Officer and Chief Investment Officer. Over the past 55 years, her expertise in multi-generational wealth management has been critical to the continued success of her firm, which now manages over $1 billion in assets. She has been instrumental in creating a firm driven by care for clients, ethical judgment, and integrity. With 5 decades of investment experience, Sheila has gained her trust, the trust of countless clients who appreciate both the shrewdness of her investments and the quality of her care. She is deeply involved in each of her firm's investment decisions, and her expertise and experience have allowed her to help clients navigate macroeconomic headwinds and weather storms unscathed. Now, in addition to her very heavy work commitments, she has also served on several charitable boards, St. Joseph's College, Children's Aid Society in New York City, both as in various roles as board chair, treasurer, chief financial officer. She was also with the American Farm School and the New York City Outward Bound. She is currently a board member of Streets International, which provides education and housing for street kids in Vietnam, as well as New Marlborough Land and Trust and Sculpture Now. She is the past president of the Financial Women's Association. That's an extremely impressive resume from a woman who accomplished this during a time when women were not usually included or welcomed in the man's world of business. Fair to say, I would think. So on that note, perhaps, Sheila, we could start with the fact that you were born and bred in Toronto. Tell us about your decision to go into business at U of T and what that experience was like for you.
Well, indeed, I signed up for commerce and finance, and the reason was that there was no question in our family that you were going to go to university. That was just a given. So I just had to find out, what I thought sounded the most attractive. And I knew I didn't want to take something that led to teaching. And I was reasonably good at math. And so sorting through the catalog, which I did, many times, I found this thing called Commerce and Finance, which did involve math, and it didn't have any science, and I was not good at science. And pure math, I wasn't interested in because that inevitably led to teaching. So that was about the extent of my research. And I was horrified when I got there on the first day because there were 149 class members and there was only one other woman. I found that totally intimidating. And even more so, I think almost everybody in the class, they were graduates of UTS and UCC and other such luminary schools. I was nothing wrong with Runnymede Collegiate, which I was where I attended. But anyway, it just added to the rather, and of course the faculty was totally men at that time too. So that was the start. And I think we were more or less sort of ignored as, this anomaly that why on earth are they here? But, nobody really, certainly we didn't get any kind of harassment, in the current, like the current Me Too movement, nothing like that. It's nothing like that. So we just soldiered on, Mary and I, and it was a pretty brutal first year. I think at the beginning of the second year, there were just 49 of us left, but Mary and I were still there, and we hung in there till the end. And so it was pretty much the same all the way through.
Interesting.
And I remember at the end of my third year, our accounting professor asked me if I had a summer job, at which I did not, because I couldn't find one that didn't involve filing. I couldn't type, so that wasn't an issue. And I was thrilled. I was absolutely thrilled. It was a real job, and it was in the investment department of Manulife, and they wanted a summer employee. So I interviewed, and I got the job. And then I later found out that the accounting professor, for whom I was so grateful, had offered the opportunity to every person, i.e., every man in the class, until he finally got to me. And but that was okay. It was a job, and I was thrilled to have a real job. So that was how I got started at Manulife. And then after I graduated, they asked me to come back, so I did. And it was called Manufacturers Life Insurance then. It wasn't Manulife. In that wonderful building on Bloor Street that they still have.
Still there.
Yeah, I was on the first floor. So it was a good experience there. I liked it.
So what was your first real job then after graduation at Manulife?
Oh, I was in the investment department. And, basically initially there was a lot of number crunching. I, continued basically what I had done in the summer. It wasn't very exciting, but it was a job, and I had interviewed at other places. I didn't really actually get to interview, really. I had applied to other places, but I didn't even get an interview anywhere else. So I was happy to have that job.
Was that because you were a woman, do you think? Do you think that played
Oh,
into it?
yes. Oh, yes. There's no question.
No question, right.
No, I mean, women just weren't supposed to have those kinds of jobs.
Right.
I certainly was the only woman at Manulife at the time that I can think of that wasn't, a clerk or a typist or something. They just, I mean, it wasn't me. It was the times. I mean, we're talking ancient times here. This is the 50s that I was at U of T.
Yes.
And the times were just very different. And I, I didn't take it. You couldn't take it personally. I mean, that's just the way it was.
That's the way it was. Yes, exactly. For women. Yeah, absolutely.
And for, other things too, like smoking. I remember we would meet every morning. I was eventually invited to these morning meetings, and it was in this tiny room, and everybody smoked, and it was horrible, but you didn't say anything. I mean, smoking was perfectly acceptable in whatever environment. So it was the times. It was
the time. Yes.
Yeah.
So you kind of accept it because it is sort of the norm. What happened after Manulife? How long were you there?
I was there for, I think it was 2 years. And then I decided that with some friends that, what we really wanted to do was to go to Europe. In those days, if you're too young to remember, but you could do it for $5 a day.
Oh, I remember that. I did it for $5 a day.
So we had saved our money and off we went. And then our plan was to travel around and then to stay in London and get a job in London. And that was also, permits and things just weren't an issue in those days. So again, Manufacturers Life had a London office. So I, of course, presented myself there, and I got a job there too. Then later, then we came back, and I went to Manulife, and then I left and went to London because I really enjoyed the first experience there. So I loved London, and so I got a job at a brokerage firm there, and or again, I was the only, they were kind of embarrassed to have me really in the research department, but they put up with it because the chairman of the company at the time had an American wife, and he considered himself a progressive type. And so he hired me, not the head of the research department. So
interesting.
But they also, when they sent out my research reports, you know, we always used to write reports. And
Yes.
Mine always were signed with my initials. My name was not there because God forbid their clients would think that there was a female writing a woman involved. Research report. Wow. Anyway, I loved London, but you know, it wasn't a place for long term. So came back. Then I went back to Manulife, and then I got offered a job in New York, so I accepted that.
How did that happen?
Well, because I was in the investment department, by this time I had moved up to being, a higher. I wasn't any longer just number crunching, right. And so I was in the course of my job, I was dealing with American brokers, and so one of them offered me this job.
Interesting. Okay.
So
was that a tough decision? Was that a tough decision to go?
No, and I'll tell you why. They offered me $12,500 a year, and I was making $7,500 at Manulife.
Wow!
So
practically double. Wow!
Took me about 30 seconds to accept.
Yes.
And New York wasn't, in those days, it was still quite inexpensive to get there on the plane. I think it was $50 or something. So no, it didn't take me long to accept. And also, I knew I wasn't going to get much further at Manulife. Things were. New York was always, I'm sure, obviously things have changed, but New York was always much more bottom line oriented. If you could, help the firm.
Right. It didn't matter gender as much this case now.
No.
Okay. Yeah. As long as you can contribute and make revenue.
Yeah.
Okay. So tell us about that job then. How long were you in that and what did you do?
Well, I was a research analyst, and I didn't stay very long because although I thought I was quite familiar with this firm, once I got in there, I found out that they were really not, there were many things they were doing, which were, if not illegal, they were close to it. And I just wasn't comfortable. And then I was told not to tell my previous employer, who was a client of the firm, certain things. And anyway, then I was offered a job by Michael Kimmelman, who was starting his firm, to come with him as a research analyst. So it didn't take me long to accept that job. I just wanted out of there, and I didn't know quite how I was going to do it, having just recently moved from to New York and signed a lease and all those things.
Yes.
Anyway, so that's how I got started at what was then Kimmelman and Company, and then ultimately became Kimmelman Baird.
So how did that happen? Because that's a big jump. I mean, from working there and then all of a sudden being the co-partner.
Well, it took place over a number of years, and I just over the years had more responsibility, and we were changing from being strictly a broker dealer to being an investment advisor. So anyway, that's how it happened.
Okay, so results produced it. I'm sure you gave the results that were important and client satisfaction, and then it developed into that. Off camera, you had mentioned to me a story about how women in New York were somehow treated at or any diverse group. I think you talked a little bit about the Union Club or something like that. Can you share that story? I think that's telling of the time.
Yeah, sure. Actually, that was when I was still working at Manulife as a research analyst, and one of I think it was my very first business trip to New York. Very exciting. I mean, wow.
You're in your 20s, and wow.
Yes. Oh, it was thrilling. Anyway, so the reason I was sent there was I was to go to this event, which was being held by Merrill Lynch. And the speaker was a very famous drug analyst. In fact, she was, and it was she was the certainly the only senior female analyst at Merrill Lynch, but she happened to be very knowledgeable about drugs and so forth. So she was put in charge of drug stocks. And so I got to the Union League Club, and the doorman said, I said I was here for such and such meeting. And he said, oh, you can't come in. It's men only. And so I thought, oh my God, how am I going to report to my boss at Manulife that I came down here and couldn't get in? So I was quite, anyway, I was standing there sort of figuring out what on earth I was going to do. And a car pulled up, and indeed in the car was the head of Merrill Lynch Research and his employee who was the speaker. So they approached the door, and the doorman said, she can't come in. Well, the Merrill Lynch person who was hosting this meeting with his institutional clients from all over the country, and here is a speaker. And anyway, the upshot of it was that Mary and I were taken round to the back and escorted. We escorted through the kitchen and up the service elevator to the room where this meeting was to be held. But had it not been for them arriving just as I was, there's no way they would have done that just for me. But
wow, isn't that's
but again, that it wasn't that unusual. These clubs were all men only, right. And so
that's the way things were
the times. But I hadn't anticipated it, and obviously neither had Manulife, because people, I don't know, we just didn't think like that. And
right. Yeah.
So, I mean, there weren't Black people or
anybody.
Yeah. I don't know if they would have turned them down, but we're not.
Yeah. That was just the cultural norms at the time, and people sort of went along with that.
Yeah.
So how have things changed then when you became partner or founder, and ran what's changed over the years? Like, how have things changed for women? Do you feel, or for you, or what's?
Things generally have changed tremendously. I mean, when I was head of the Financial Women's Association, that was back in the middle 70s. And we were very proud to have 100 members by that time. And now it's literally thousands. I mean, the organization still exists, but it's totally different. And, there weren't women in senior positions then. Of course, there were lots of women working in Wall Street, but they were not in even, if you might get a job as an assistant research analyst, but there weren't. Anyway, it's totally different.
Yes, yeah. What do you think helped change that? What moved the needle?
Well, I guess, clearly women were talented, and I guess a few brave souls were in a position to promote women to more senior positions. I mean, there were more women going to business school at that time. And I don't think it was kind of slow. I mean, Wall Street is pretty conservative, but it just inevitably did happen, I guess. I don't know why, really, what the triggers were.
Yeah. Well, obviously, look what it did for your trajectory. I mean, you started out not even getting offer jobs right at the very beginning, and now you're the head of a very successful firm. So tell us your lessons learned, or any advice that you would give women who are looking at trying to achieve their own goals and get into senior leadership positions and make a difference. What were some of the things that you've learned that you'd be willing to share?
I think one thing that's very important, and that is to make sure that your experience is broad. I think there's a tendency for successful women to focus very narrowly on their job, and ultimately that can hurt them if they haven't had experience in other areas, like marketing or budgeting or whatever. You don't have to be an expert in those things, but you want to have some experience in those things. And if you can't get that in your own firm, not because of any malice, but just because you're supposed to be doing this job and that's what you're supposed to be focused on. If you can lobby to get assignments that are a little bit out of your path, definitely take them. You may think you don't know enough, but you will learn, and that's how you do learn, is by not being timid about taking jobs that you think maybe you're not really suited for, but go for it, because that'll give you the experience. And then if it's still not happening or can't happen at your job, then look outside to nonprofits, for instance, which are, especially the smaller ones, are very often delighted to have a board member who can bring some other experience to their operation. And you can gain a lot of experience on nonprofit boards in terms of other areas that you would inevitably would be involved in as a board member, just as you would if you were a board member of a corporation. But so indeed, as you read that list of things that I've been involved in, I've always felt I got more out of those participations than I put into it, really. People that you meet, the contacts you meet, the different kinds of things you're in a position to do, evaluating people. It really is very helpful, I think. So I think that's one important thing. I think another thing, when you're at a position where you're building your own team, I think it's very easy to build a team of folks that look just like you and think like you. That's the easy way to go. But you'll end up with a much stronger team if you actively seek to diversify it. And that can take a while to get that to meld together as a team. But in the end, it's worthwhile. I think, to do that. You just end up with a stronger team. I'm very proud of the team that we have at Kimmelman Baird. My younger partners are, one is a Black woman, one is an American-born East Indian, and then the son of my original partner, who is Jewish. And it took a while, but in the end, I'm terribly proud of them, and everybody respects each other's views, and they all bring different perspectives, and it's been really great and very, very.
That's a great example. The importance of diversity. Absolutely.
Oh, it really is. There are many other, of course, things that management issues, and to show my prejudices. I think if you look at how Donald Trump managed his team, I think you just do everything exactly 180 degrees the other way.
The antithesis of leadership. Yes.
I think so.
I agree.
He fostered nasty competition. He rewarded those who were sycophants. Dreadful man. But anyway, we're not supposed to get involved.
You're in a better state now, though.
Yes. I think so. So those are a couple of things.
It's interesting. I just want to share based some examples when you talked about broadening your experiences. What the research has shown from an HR perspective is that when there's a job posting, women look at the job and they go through every item and they point at everything they haven't done and they don't apply because they don't have 100%. Men look at the job, 50, 40%, they go, yeah, hey, I can do that. They put their hand up, they apply, and they get the job. So it's trying to get women to have the confidence to take the risk to say, you know what, the reason I want this job is because I don't know it all. I want to learn it. And that's a legitimate reason for finding a job.
Absolutely.
Trying to help
Absolutely.
women get the confidence
Yeah.
to do that. Any thoughts on that? Like, confidence is a big issue for
Oh,
women.
it's huge. It's huge. And you need that even in, difficult situations, or not difficult, but challenging situations, you still want to portray that sense of confidence, because if you don't,
Yes.
you'll be considered, weak, and it's like women don't speak up at meetings.
Right.
Of course, you don't want to say something that is not significant or meaningful, but you really, it's so important to.
Yes.
I can't use. Do you think that's still the case? I mean,
Oh yeah. That's the number one issue that we see with women, is they lack the confidence. And we often talk about the strategy of fake it till you feel it. What does a confident person look like? What do they sound like? Fake it. Go in that meeting, sound confident. It's kind of like a duck on a water. They look serene, but they're pedaling like crazy underneath. And that's basically what it is sometimes. Sometimes you don't really know, but you've got to present in a way
absolutely
that it is you trust and confidence. And I don't know whether I don't understand why so many women find that very hard. I think we've been socialized to be nice and kind and polite. Like you say, we don't speak up. We let other people speak up. We kind of take the seat outside the table rather than at the table. We don't know that our voice is valuable. I think it's socializing a bit. And I think it's just, I heard a speaker recently that said, we raise boys to be brave, but we raise girls to be nice. And girls can be nice and brave. You can be both.
Well, and also there's that fear that you'll be thought aggressive, which is a favorable if it applies to a man, but not to a woman.
Exactly.
I mean, look at what Hillary Clinton went through. I mean, she was basically a pushy broad, and and a lot of people couldn't stand her because of that, and in spite of her abilities.
Yes. There's a stereotypic thought out there that women should be a certain way, and it has not served us well. Like, I think now more women are graduating from university than men. Women have talents, women have abilities, they need equal opportunities to demonstrate those. So back to you, sorry. So other things that you would give advice, or any strategies you would give young women trying to succeed today?
Well, I think probably it sounds like many people who might be looking at this are already in business, and maybe they have already started their own business or would like to start their own business. And a couple of things I would say in that regard is that if it's a small firm or in a small firm, whether you founded it or not, or you're just part of it, I mean, don't hesitate to outsource some of the functions. It can be a very efficient way of dealing with a need in a small firm, but without having to set up a whole department. I'm just, for example, we outsource our tech support. We're a small firm. We don't. It wouldn't be economic for us to hire a highly qualified tech person. So we outsource the tech function. We outsource some of our accounting functions. We outsource compliance, actually. I mean, I'm still in charge, but because they're, compliance in our industry these days is huge effort, because they're constantly changing the rules and regulations. It's just a constant stream and you have to keep on top of that and make sure that your firm is compliant. And so you really need a well-paid lawyer to do that. Well, that's, again, so we can outsource. So I think it's a way of having all those the input of all that expertise without actually having to hire them and get, And then the other advantage of small firms is you're not tied to rigid compensation schedules. So if you have somebody that is really good and you want to make sure that you keep them in a small firm, you can reward them according to their talents. You're not tied to some kind of series of rules. So
Good point.
I think those are the things that I would.
It's interesting you're talking about outsourcing. A lot of women now, as you know, with the pandemic, have been hit badly in terms of the workforce. They've lost jobs because they're in a lot of times in industries that were hit, tourism, you know, various areas like that. But also they're taking on more of the childcare responsibility or the elder care responsibility. So a lot of women have had to leave their jobs. And I know in Ontario now, they just were in another lockdown and they've just announced, again, another lockdown. They're going to close, they've closed the schools and the daycares. So women have been, you know, overloaded. So your comment about outsourcing works in personal life too. You know, if the woman has to be the caregiver and the housekeeper and the cook and the finance, you know, you can outsource those things. You know, someone can come and clean, someone can take care, you know, at better times. Obviously during the pandemic, it's hard with all the restrictions, but I think what I've noticed, and I've suffered from this myself as a woman, is you take on too many things. You know, you've got so many balls on the air where you don't have to be everything. You know, I learned very early on that I didn't have to be the one that cleaned my house. Do you know what I mean? Like, I could stimulate the economy quite nicely by someone doing that. That maybe my time and energy could be put elsewhere where I was more fulfilled and where it just made more sense or I could give more meaning. So I think that concept of outsourcing is a really important one. Anything about your current job that you're still learning? I'm sure we learn every day in terms of women in the investment industry or yourself.
Well, yeah, learn every day, but I mean, in our business, you have to keep very current with what's going on. And yeah, I think we've certainly continued to learn. I mean, and thank goodness for my younger partners, because technology is such a tremendous asset. And, you know, I would be hopeless without their input and their implementation and their constant having to coach me how to do things.
Yes.
And I think too, they're very specific to our industry, but our client base ages, we're very actively courting their children. And I think, you know, building that client base in whatever industry you're in and thinking long-term about what happens when that client, for whatever reason, leaves, either you finished the work for them or whatever, you've got to always be thinking about the next.
Yep. Succession planning, basically, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. Thank you. So I'm going to end with one last question about, you know, hindsight is 2020, isn't it? And if you were talking to your 25-year-old self now, knowing what you know and all the experiences you've had, what would you tell her?
Well, I mean, apart from the things that we've sort of covered along the way, I would think one other thing that we haven't really mentioned, and that's really important to establish your own set of principles and stick to them in terms of ethics. I mean, you'll be offered opportunities along the way to bend the rules a little bit for one reason or another. It always sounds like a good reason, but be very aware of that. And it's a slippery slope once you step into that path. I think, as you were saying earlier, I think being able, whether you're confident or not, but being able to portray confidence, that's really important to do. And of course, you back it up with maybe you are working twice as hard to
Mhm.
have that information, but do it, and then don't be afraid to show it
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
participate. And again, broaden your experience where you can. I think that's so important as you're moving up that ladder. You need to know about more than just that particular
Yes.
little bit that
Yes.
you're
Yes.
focused on at the moment, however you get that experience.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So the being true to yourself and knowing your values, I'm hearing you say, are really critical, so that you stick to that, and make sure that you have the integrity, yes, to go forward. Yes, absolutely. Well, I want to thank you so much for your time. You've shared your incredible story, the wisdom you've shared, and your advice for the emerging women leaders who we so much want to support and encourage and promote. But it's women like you who inspire and encourage women to fulfill their dreams and get to where they want to get to, and be the best leaders they can be. So I thank you so much for agreeing to the time and for paying it forward in such a generous way.
Oh, not at all. It's been my pleasure. Thank you, Linda.
Thank you.
And good luck to all your students.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm sure they appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm just going to stop the recording.